it's come time to sharpen your pencil. Now, if you buy a pencil at an art supply store, it usually comes already sharpened. But this is not enough for our purposes. Even if you use a sharpener, this will usually give you a tip like the one that you see here. So I will show you how to sharpen your pencil using the utility knife that you got as part of your first assignment. I happen to be left-handed, which means that I'm holding the pencil in my right hand and the utility knife in my left. So all you need to do is to hold the utility knife in one hand, put it against the pencil, but push with the hand that's holding the pencil. In that way. I would recommend doing this over a garbage can or something of the kind, or otherwise you will get pencil shavings everywhere. And so you keep slightly turning the pencil as you cut away at it. So what I am recommending is that you cut about an inch of the wood into a cone of sorts, and then begin to carve closer to the graphite itself and leave about around a 1/4 inch or a centimeter of graphite. They don't make lead pencils available anymore. And then you can go the other way to clean it up a bit. And there it is. So for our purposes, this is as sharp as it needs to be. It's actually even a little sharper. However, in the future, when we are when we're working on smaller details and things that are maybe a little more complex, you can use the sandpaper that you acquired as part of your first assignment, and just slightly move your pencil, move the graphite of the pencil around a bit in order to establish an even sharper point. So now that you've sharpened your pencil, it's now time to prepare the eraser. Now this might sound a little unusual, but all you have to do is take either the Papermate Pink Pearl or any other hard eraser that you got and cut at an angle. So you've essentially cut it approximately in half. And then I would cut it into a triangle. And this is the only part of the eraser that you will need to use. So the reason for cutting it is that it can give you an edge here, but it can also give you a whole area with which you erase, or it gives you a sharp edge for smaller details. And it preserves the other parts of the eraser once this runs out. In this assignment, you're going to prepare your pencils by sharpening them and cut your erasers into little triangles like I showed you. Take your 5 pencils and practice sharpening them. Start slowly. It's very possible you will break the graphite on your first few tries, but just keep at it. Remember, it's the amount of graphite that's important, not the sharpness. Okay, so now that we've covered our supplies and stretched our paper and put it aside for now, let's actually start making some marks on paper. So all you need for this is your pad of paper don't use the paper that we stretched on the panel until the final assignment. So just open up your pad of paper to a clean sheet, take your pencil in your hand, and we can get started on it. Before we begin, the only thing that I'm going to tell you is how to hold the pencil in your hand. Now, I think you can see it on the camera here. The importance of holding it the way that I have it here, so that the pencil is basically, you're simply like, it should be in your hand without you actually holding it, and then you're just slightly keeping it in place. If you hold it the way that I'm holding it here, as far back as possible, it can give you the largest amount of movement to begin with, but also won't cramp your hand, and will just feel like an extension of your hand. So now we begin by making a mark or two. So just put your pencil on the paper and begin to move it around without picking it up. Play around with how dark you get the line, get the darkest line that you possibly can, then immediately drop off and get the lightest line that you can. Then pick the pencil up and do a line that's not as long. Practice making a light line that becomes a dark line. Practice making a dark line that becomes a light line. If you see that you're moving, that you're like that, if you move across the page in one particular direction, counter that by going the other way. So all these are lines, and curves. You can do a straight line or two, as many as you want, actually, as many as you feel that you need. Also, experiment with the angle of the pencil in relation to your pad of paper. So play around with keeping the pencil as perpendicular as possible to the paper that you have, and you'll see that it usually lends itself to a line that is a bit stronger, a bit heavier. Then play around with putting your pencil as parallel to the surface of the paper, and you'll see that it's actually much easier to make a line that's a lot lighter, and then experiment with both of those at once and just move it around. Like, the key here is to almost not be aware that there is a pencil in your hand. That's all there is to it. In this assignment, you're going to fill 5 big sketchpad sheets of paper with all kinds of straight and curved lines. Explore the different effects you get by changing the pressure with which you apply the pencil, as well as the angle that you place the pencil to the paper. Okay, now, we have practiced making marks on paper without any control involved. Now let's add an element of control and planning. So all you'll need again is your pencil and your pad of paper. So all we need to do here is to place a point anywhere on the paper. Then what you're going to do is place another point about 1.5 to 2 inches away from the other one. And then you're going to connect them. So let's try that exercise again, but now placing the point slightly further away from our initial point. And then you're going to connect them. And you're going to aim, essentially, and try to make a line that hits both points. If you're slightly off, for one, that's okay, but you can also just try again. And it's easier to correct that line because you already have the line that's incorrect, which makes it easier to evaluate, is the other line above that one, below that one, and so on. So I would keep practicing until you get to a point where you can get all the way across all across the page. So in order to achieve to put a line in between those 2 points, you might have to step away from your paper and approximate that angle, estimate it, think about it, and then almost. So I know that my point is slightly higher, so I'm just going to try to keep that, and that went off again. So just keep practicing this. The importance here is you don't need to be extremely exact, but you just need to keep taking it from point to point. And if you've been going across, now it's time to go from top to bottom, from the bottom to the top. So that's just it. In this assignment, you're going to fill 4 big 18 by 24-inch sketchpad sheets with point-to-point lines. As soon as the page fills up and all the lines get too confusing, move on to the next page. Your goal with this assignment is to connect 2 points at complete opposite ends of the page with a success rate of at least 80%. Good luck! So now that you have learned to connect points on paper, it's time to practice putting down a flat tone. What you will need for this is your pencil and the ruled notebook paper that I asked you to buy. So in order to begin, I would ignore the lines on the paper. I would tilt the pencil so that the angle is as parallel to the paper as possible. And then without lifting it off the paper, you just move it in the way that I'm showing you here. Then you could go over this at a slightly different angle. Then you could work to get a larger area covered. So you will be able to see some of these lines, and that's okay. Because of the way that we have sharpened our pencil, there's a large amount of graphite to use. So if you are able to turn it and almost place it on the paper. Okay, so after you've filled up a couple of pages of this, it's time to do the exact same things within the margins of the ruled notebook. So you can pick any point on the notebook and just do the exact same kind of technique in between the lines. It doesn't have to be exactly in between them, but do the best that you can. And then after you fill in a space, maybe it's time to move on to a larger. So instead of one margin, now you're working within two or more. So I would not only work away from my hand, but then also practice working toward your hand. The next thing, after you get a bit more comfortable here, is to work within the margins, but start with a lighter tone, and then move into a darker tone. Make it as dark as you can, and then you can move that tone out again into a tone that should seamlessly blend back into the paper. In this assignment, you're going to fill up 4 pages of your ruled notebook with flat tones. Practice moving the pencil in different directions and changing the angle of the strokes. Don't skip this assignment. The skills you gain from this will be instrumental for all the exercises in this program. Now that we've practiced placing a flat tone on paper, let's move on to hatching. So here I'm going to ask you to do something slightly differently. You're going to begin by actually thinking about the margins that you have here on the paper. So, and the other thing that I would ask you to do is to now turn your pencil up to about a 45-degree angle or so. And begin by doing the same exact thing that you did when you were placing a flatter tone on paper. And you see, you already have something that resembles a hatch considerably more, because you're working more with the point of the pencil than with a side of the graphite. So after you fill a few lines of this, begin by picking your pencil up ever so slightly, work within the margins, and try to keep the lines as parallel as possible, and use the movement that is the most comfortable. So in my case, it's from top to bottom at this angle. Afterwards, you can try to speed this up. So after you've gotten a few lines of that, you can now alter the angle and go the other way. After this, I would not go from top to bottom, but go from the bottom to the top of the margin. Then at a different angle. And the step after this would now be to angle our hatch, but still stay within the margins. And then the other way. So after a couple of pages of this, you can then begin practicing a hatch that's curved. From top to bottom, then from the bottom to the top, then change the angle, and then you do the exact same thing but with a curved hatch, except that you will also need to practice curving the other way. So after you've gotten that in, now it's time to begin to expand our hatch to now take up more than one of these of the margins. So that's all there is to this assignment. The importance here is that you can't think too hard about it, because a hatch has to become completely automatic. So you see that when you're starting out, you will be thinking about it and getting the angles accurate, but it's important that you do it enough that you realize that you're not thinking at all about what's happening on the page in front of you. In this assignment, you're going to fill up 6 pages of your ruled notebook with hatch marks. Practice moving the pencil in different directions and changing the angle of the hatch marks. Try straight and curved marks in all directions. It is important that your hatching becomes intuitive and automatic. Remember, when you catch yourself thinking about something else, just keep going. Around page 2 or 3, turn on some music or an audiobook to help you lose focus. Now it's time to move on to hatching and placing a tone on your sketchbook paper. This is almost easier because you don't have to stay, at least at the beginning, within any kind of margin. So I would just start out with placing a flat tone on the paper. Go away from your hand, then move toward your hand. You can do a small area of tone. You can try a larger area of tone. Then you can experiment with moving out of sort of a medium tone into a tone that sort of seamlessly blends into the paper, and then you can start out with a lighter tone and push it gradually darker and darker. Okay, so now it's time to practice our hatch marks. So you see that when you hatch on the larger pad of paper, there's more of a movement. It will require more of a movement of the hand. So I would begin by making a hatch that is relatively large. And you can curve them, and you can have a curve that moves. You can have a straight line that moves into a curve. It could start out as it could start out small and become larger as you go. You can do a large curve, and then you can hatch across that curve. And see, in here, I'm using almost my entire arm. And so after you get a page or two of this, what I would recommend is to combine the skills that you got by hatching in your notebooks and on the paper. So what you need to do is create a shape and then hatch within that shape. You could also sort of begin by creating a shape with the hatch. The key here is to anticipate what that shape is going to be. So the importance of controlling your hatch is that you'll see that you'll actually be making an edge with the ends of the hatch marks. In this assignment, you're going to fill up 4 pages of your 18 by 24 inch sketchpad paper with both hatch marks and flat tones. Start by working your way around the page. Once you feel comfortable with a larger hatch, draw some enclosed organic shapes and fill them in with hatch marks, paying particular attention to stay as much within the contour as possible. Good luck! My name is Iliya, and I would like to welcome you to the Russian Academic Drawing Program. Unlike in the West, Russia preserved representational techniques of the 19th century in a remarkably unaltered form. I spent 8 years in the Academy's incredibly rigorous painting department that formed not only my technique, but my artistic outlook as well. I understand that most artists aren't able to invest the time and resources required to study seriously at the Sharpening Academy. Because of this, we have decided to produce this unique online program. I have set out to help you master the most essential components of the method. I offer plenty of assignments to help you become as proficient as possible in the principles I cover. Now, no education is complete without self-education, and practice is an absolutely essential component. Please go over each assignment as many times as it takes to truly internalize the concepts before moving on to the next one. And I'm very excited to share the first part of my program, the fundamentals. In this section, we're going to begin as if you have never had any drawing experience whatsoever, let alone training. If you have, I still recommend taking the time and going through this part of the program, as there are important techniques and procedures covered here that you might not have been exposed to, and that will most definitely aid you in working through the more advanced assignments in the next part of the program. As repetition is the mother of learning, it never hurts to go back to the fundamentals. With that, let's begin.